was very simple. They were using data and technology, not people, and they were dramatically outperforming the market. And takeaway from that was that the algorithms to run the data was the easier part. The challenging part was, how do you get all the data into a single format, single pane of glass? That is the big challenge.
My guest today is Chris Harrison. Chris is the co-founder and CEO of EmergeGen. Chris, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So can you spend a little time to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what the company does?
Sure. So I'm Chris Harrison. So I spent 35 years as a struggling investment banker and sales and trading guy on Wall Street and asset management. But the last almost 9 years now, I've been in fintech data technology startups. I joined Emergen 2 years ago with the idea of simply, if AI was going to be effective, the most important thing companies need to understand is, how do they get all of the data that's not structured, which is 80 to 90% of their overall data, quickly, efficiently, and accurately into a format that they can use to run through AI models. That's kind of the first stage of what you need to do, is get the data in the right spot. So our goal was to be able to create a solution that would allow companies to do that. And so that's been the journey for the last 2 years at Emergen. And I think we've proven pretty substantially that we have created something that is unique, that really does not have a competitor at this point, but the opportunity set is immense. Always a good sign.
Yeah, it's usually when you have something like that, it's only a matter of time before the competitors come, crawling in, but that's a good problem to have, right? At that point in time, usually you've had enough time to build a moat and show real value, your different relationships and customers. So that's great. And I know you're a bit tongue in cheek there, but I know you've had a lot of success in Wall Street.
Exactly. They didn't appreciate it. But that's where I got started. And it was actually a guy that I worked with, a young kid in the accounting class, in the accounting group at the firm, and his data scientist friend. And it was a fully automated approach to U.S. equities.
Obviously, you had some instances where you came across this problem set, a couple of times over your tenure. When you had the technology, there's probably a lot of different use cases you can kind of attack with that technology. Did you know from the start the focus would be on data unification and operationalization, or was that kind of a journey over time where it's determined, hey, this really is the next thing we need to focus on and what the technology is best placed for?
That was the thought process of what we could do with the model. He was telling me it was industry agnostic, it was use case agnostic. Now, at the time when I told people that, these are friends that are very technologically astute, they all told me that's impossible. So I had my doubts as what it could really do. How use case agnostic was it really? So the first thing we did, we started taking out and doing test drives with friends of mine at different entities and started working on lots of different use cases. And what was amazing was the speed and accuracy was the same regardless of what unstructured data we put in front of it. We'd done earnings calls, we had done margin agreements, ISDA agreements, commercial real estate, residential real estate, leases, contracts, invoices, all kinds of different formats of documentation and unstructured and semi-structured data. And it really didn't matter. We were still getting high 90% accuracy, and a lot of times 100% accuracy, with never having seen the document before and without any tagging, label, or training of a model, which is what most of the current technology has to do to get any kind of fidelity. That was the crazy. Yeah, I had a couple of, I think the head of AI at Goldman at the time told me, you guys have literally discovered fire. Because people have been trying to solve this problem for 15 years. It's not like an unknown problem. Just no one had taken the approach that we took and had the experience of a senior tech team to be able to make it work. That's really what.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is old as time, right? I spent a good amount of my tenure in consulting, and OCR was a big thing, people trying to interpret and put things into rationalized databases that were unstructured with varying degrees of success, very intensive as far as like the additional analysis and human element of that, right? So much of the things that we used to do were massive programs that had a certain outcome that was 80% dependent on getting the right data from the right place. And again, to your point, it wasn't always in an easy to find or easy to digest manner. So definitely a long entrenched issue that I've personally seen across the industry. I guess to make this a little bit more tangible and real, and obviously you don't have to use any specific names, but can you share like some key challenges that you've seen client firms face in scaling and utilizing their data infrastructure and how EmergeGen kind of helped them overcome that challenge?
Yeah, so here I'll give you a couple examples. One clean, simple example is one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the world. We met with the gentleman who runs the New York office, and their problem was they create 40,000 lease proposals a year out of this office. So I said, well, how do you do it? He said, well, we have 2,000 people that literally cut and paste old lease proposals to make new lease proposals. And I'm sitting there shaking. I'm like, there's no way that's possible. He said, oh yeah, that's how we do it. So I said, okay, give us one of those lease agreements, which is about a 300-page document. It's about as complex a document as you're going to find. And then it has pictures of, actual, JPEGs of parking garages. It has architectural drawings. It has tables, graphs, really blurred copies of things. And then it's a pretty messy document. So he gave us that. And then they have a template that they have where that the people that are creating these manually make sure that all that information on that template pretty much is in a lease proposal. It's about 95 metrics, I think. And we put those two things in the system. I said, now watch this. And we hit go. Within 15 seconds, our system had read that 300-page document, extracted all the relevant information, understood the context of the document, just like a human would. And then it looked at the metrics that they were looking for. If that information was in the document, it pulled it out, gave you a nice, eloquent answer. And if it wasn't in the document, it gave you NA. So it doesn't hallucinate, meaning it's got the zero-shot learning. So that's how you get to 100% precision. And it did that in about 15 seconds. Now that's on a laptop. And the first thing out of his head was, holy, well, I can get rid of 1,000 people. And I'm like, that's like the first thought process out of people typically. But I was like, that's one way of thinking at it. Another way of looking at this is, how do we repurpose those people? How about if now we take the last 15 years of your lease proposals, load them through our system. So now we have a queryable database. We have your own chat GTP of your data, all these lease proposals. And there's not a lot of variables. There's like the building, the address, the lawyer, the landlord, and the client. That's kind of it, right? And put that in the system. So so now to create new lease proposals, when RFP comes in, they just load in the system. 95% of the work will be done by the system in seconds. Then that admin person can then take that and hand that to the salesperson on that deal and have them do the last 5%, right? So we call it taking the human out of the loop, putting them on the loop. So you're just empowering the person. So now instead of doing 40,000 lease proposals a year, maybe do 150,000. That's one part of it. The other part of it we came to found out is they only win 10% of the deals. So 90% of their effort is for zero. So we said, now what can be done is we can compare your winners versus your losers and start doing analytics on what's in the winners that wasn't in the losers, and how do you up your win? So if you can double your win ratio, which seems pretty easy, now you've got 20% success rate, so you could double your revenue. And if you could triple the amount of deals you're doing, all of a sudden you're talking dramatically incremental revenue to where you are without changing your cost basis. Now, the reality is they could literally cut their costs in half, which is close to $100 million because these people are based in New York, and triple, quadruple your revenue, without make the thing more efficient. And that's just one simple use case within one organization to give you an idea. And people think, oh, that doesn't exist in big firms today. It exists in every big firm today. So that's funny. There's a perfect example.
Out of the loop to on the loop. I like that because reminds me of, if you're in the business, it's hard to work on the business. And so if they're in the process, it's hard to work on the process. When they're on the loop then, and they're not stuck in the middle of it, there's so many things that they can unlock and, to your point, potentially increase revenue. And so that's a pretty good outcome if you can keep costs the same or reduced and double or triple revenue. That's pretty incredible. You work in a lot of spaces, even kind of commercial real estate we talked about. There's a lot of legalese. You have to get the specifics right. We're talking about legal documents there. Financial services, very highly regulated. Defense, privacy, regulation. So the complexity of some of the industries you're playing in is very high. What shifts are you seeing in the industry right now?
So one of the things that we've built into the model, so just to kind of step back a second, The senior tech team has been working on this problem for over 15 years, and they've been in the AI, machine learning, ontology, knowledge base, OCR, NLP technology space for 30 years each. The 4 senior guys. So we've got a lot of experience. And so if you look at what's in the model was built from the ground up, understanding where AI regulation is coming. Because Alan sits on the board in Europe. So with all the GDPR rules, he was involved in that, right? So he sits on IEEE in the United States, which is Thomas Edison Group out of Princeton, that will be setting the AI governance rules in the US. So he understands what's coming. So we built it from the ground up to have AI governance built in, data lineage, all those different things. But when you look at from a security standpoint, because these guys are all ethical hackers and cybersecurity experts, you use something called zero copy. So what does that mean? Most technology that gets deployed, especially a SaaS model, the data comes to the model does whatever it does to it and sends it back. Ours is different. We deploy our models in the client's environment, whatever they're using, whether it's Azure, AWS, or Snowflake, or Databricks, it doesn't matter. Ours is something we call zero copy. So our scenario, the model moves to the data. The data does not move to the model. So the model never sees the data. It never trains on the data. There's no leakage of the data, which is a big problem with everyone trying to use Copilot or trying to use large language models to solve these problems. They have no idea if that data is leaking out into the public universe, even when they have private instances. So that's the problem. LLMs are great for certain tasks and I use them all the time. But for what we're talking about with domain-specific, challenging documents, I'd call them bespoke documents, LLMs are not the solution and never will be. There's no data lineage, there's no AI governance, there's no guardrails on it. And so it will never be something that legal compliance is ever, in our opinion, will ever get comfortable with. So where we like to plug in is before that, take all that data, run it in, create that unified data layer. Then you can feed that to an LLM. Then you have clean, accurate data going in. So your output should not have hallucinations because they're really good at modeling. They're really good at analytics. They're really good at reporting. Doing big chunks of data is really what they're built for and do very, very well. What we do up front with the data prep and all, that they do not do well.
Yeah. No matter how sophisticated the model, still garbage in, garbage out, right? So the data prep is very underrated.
Yeah, they're not built for that. And you got to start, the building has to be, where's your end goal? And you have to build from the beginning to build all of this in. You can't retroactively go back to large language models and try to change them because they've already been built and trained. Like that, the genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah. So what trends in AI do you think are underappreciated or potentially overlooked by the market today?
This will be controversial, but the reality is large language models have been dramatically overhyped. In our opinion, we think small language models, now they call them focused language models. Silicon Valley comes out with new acronyms all the time, but they're like, our model is 7, 8 billion parameters. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that. That's use case specific, domain specific. That's how you get accuracy. It's not scaling up. That's not how you're going to get accuracy. And then the other thing is our model runs at like 1/10 to 1/100th the cost of a large language model. Because every time you're looking for something, it's stored in our knowledge graphs, right? So it's easy, quick access. It's cheap to process. You're not trying to boil the ocean every time you ask a question, right? So it's much cheaper to run. So that's also, and it uses a lot less power, which is going to become, as everyone sees, the amount of money going into power for databases and things. That's going to also be important. It's how do you do this with using less power? So to me, that's a trend. I think these guys like Sam Altman's completely oversold. And Anthropic, I was just watching something today where he was saying 6 months ago that 90% of all the code would be written by large language models. Well, that's not happening. In fact, it's going the other way because people are finding it slower using large language models to write the code and then having to check it. And there's error. There's all kinds of things that go on with it. So it's not as simple as everyone thought it was going to be. And the fact that you're going to get to the point where the models don't need people, we don't see that. They're a help to people. They'll do 95% of the work, but the humans got to do the rest. And we don't see that changing anytime in the near term. Like all these talking about AGI and this, it depends on what your definition is. But I think those are the two things. Are the large language models are overhyped. It's getting commoditized. They're all training on the same data. There's very little difference between Chat 4 and Chat 5 and Grok 3 and Grok 4. So I think small language focused is going to be where the, in the industries we look to do and where we're going to spend our time, that is going to be the solution. It's not going to be the large language models.
Smaller expert models. Yeah, that makes sense. A couple of things you said resonate, right? Like if 90% of the code is written by, Claude or one of these LLMs, probably the senior tech and engineers in that company are having the biggest headaches of their life because they're going back and having to clean up and edit all of this kind of gobbledygook that might work. Yes, maybe it can produce 90% of functionality, but does it work together as a coherent, unified landscape? Probably not. So definitely that. And then to your point, the amount of energy usage on some of these things, a lot of people, even where a company does have their own private LLM, they just automatically use the most powerful model, maybe a reasoning model, right? For something that might take, 2 seconds of actual thought, it's going to go through the whole reasoning process and use way more energy and way more cost than it probably should. Probably don't even need the large language model to begin with on some of those instances. And I think the estimates are by 2030, I think it's 30% of energy will be consumed by data centers at that point, which, you're in the space, that makes sense, but that is just kind of an astronomical percentage of overall energy usage as a country. So I definitely agree with some of the things that you're saying there.
I think there's another tail to that story, which is Nelson. You listen to Jensen at NVIDIA, the energy consumption, even though the power's going up, the energy consumption in a lot of these chips are actually coming down to some extent. But to your point, with large language models, you're always banging the best GPUs that exist. Those are very expensive. With our model, depends on, because of the way it's built, we can run on CPUs or GPUs. If people need real-time data, you're going to use GPUs and you're going to multi-thread and you can run as fast as you want through the software. Is not the slowdown to what you get in the data. It's how much power you put to it, right? But there's a lot of things most people need, and a day is more than sufficient. And for that, you can use CPUs and dramatically reduce the power, dramatically reduce the cost. So you want that flexibility.
And if you can work on a laptop, the whole model on a laptop, that's a pretty good reduction in power and chips needed. I guess having been in this space for a couple of years now, what's something that's been kind of surprisingly frustrating? And then on the flip side, what's something that's working really well for you guys now that you're planning on doubling down on?
I think the most surprising thing to me is funding. The funding we've raised has been our own internal funds and then kind of friends and family at this point. Now we've got good friends and family. So, we've got over $7 million into the bill. But think about that. 2 years, $7 million to get to where we are, think how much money's been dumped into chat. Burning $5 billion a year, whatever the number is, right? So just on a ROI, return of capital, it's dramatically. But what I found is going out and talking to people have made a lot of investments in AI. A lot of those won't pan out, and trying to separate actual real products that work from products that are, as people call it, vaporware. That's very hard for VC funds or family offices that want to invest in the space. I'd say that's the biggest surprise and the biggest challenge is the lack of understanding of really how AI works and people that truly understand AI that can actually diligence it. Yeah. That's probably the biggest surprise. And I'm talking major institutions, the guys running data, the guys running technology, the guys are the chief investment officer, chief info officer, don't really have much depth and understanding of AI. That's probably the biggest shock. So getting funding, that's been one of our biggest challenges. The demand side, off the charts. Partnerships, everyone wants to partner because whether it's Snowflake or Databricks, where they are great at structured data, but are not good at all in unstructured data. So 80 to 90% of the data they would like to be storing and processing for clients sits outside their purview. Same thing with AWS, same thing with Salesforce, who we're now partnered with. So all of these firms are looking for that solution. So just this weekend, I met with one of the senior people at Oracle at a wedding. And I explained what we do. And he says, holy crap. He goes, all my clients are looking for this solution. I'm going to get you hooked up next week, meet with our product and partner guys, because this is something we need. So anyone that's got a cloud, anyone that's got a database, which Oracle has both, they're all looking for this kind of solution where you can set up automated data pipelines of unstructured, semi-structured, and stitch it without any people in the middle to create that unified data layer. So the
Yeah,
partnerships has been the biggest surprise. And then we've got some of the names as partners without really having a tremendous amount of commercial traction yet. So that's been the good news.
it's really cool. And I mean, a lot of those names too, Oracle, for example, I used to do a bunch of work with them. They really were behind the scenes. You didn't hear too much about them. And then all of a sudden now the growth that they're experiencing is insane. So a lot of these partners too are like growing and need someone to help with that growth and service some of their clients. So that's excellent. And as an aside, it is interesting. You mentioned that, even some of the CIOs at some of these companies aren't the best at doing the due diligence and understanding, what signal from noise as far as AI companies. We see all of these AI generated images that are almost too good for a layman to interpret whether it's a legitimate photo or AI generated. You would hope that, at the nexus of some of these tech positions at big companies, they would have a bit more depth and understanding. But I think it's right that, in certain aspects, they are as naive still as some of the rest of us. So that is an interesting observation. I guess talking about partnerships, I know recently you guys had a pretty big announcement in the kind of government servicing space and with Caresoft. Don't know if you want to kind of just talk a little bit about how that came about and, what that means to you guys.
Yeah. So where are we? September. So 6 months ago, I knew nothing about the government DoD space contracting awards, any of it. But there was a local gentleman who's been in that contracting space for 30 years, kind of ex-Army military intelligence. And he said, wow, every one of these awards now is looking for AI. You guys would be a great fit. So we brought him on as a consultant. We connected and created a partnership with a Hawaiian native called Lavi. It was our first entrance. And boy, yeah, every award coming up was like, you got to have AI. It went from consulting being literally just putting butts in seats, right? And having people do contracting work to how do you put AI in and get rid of people in the seats, right? So complete 180 on how they looked at things. So we partnered with them. We're in probably 7 proposals with them. We got a pricing, waiting to hear back on something with the Air Force. We've got something that we were kind of awarded, but then DOJ kicked back on the Army. So we got a couple of things in progress there, and those are for us are substantial contracts, 5-year deals, $4 or $5 million a piece. So those are really substantial opportunities for us. That led us to another group called Diversified Systems Group, which is another minority firm. So we have some things going with them with Department of Transportation. And then that led us to a group called C5. C5 introduced us to Caresoft. We sat down with them, explained what we do. They were like, we need you on our platform. So they're very efficient and move very quickly. So quickly got up and running as a partner. We just had a call with them today. That's really exciting for us is they have a service group. So they will actually do the professional services. We'll partner with them. They'll find the deals, right, as our prime. They'll be the service partner. We literally just will license our technology into that opportunity, that award, which is exactly what we want. Because the service business is a very tough, very low margin business, and it's very competitive. What we do right now there's a lot of competition. So it's much more interesting to us. That partnership is going to be, they've already got us in 6 proposals, literally within a week of signing up. So they're the 100-pound gorilla.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like they get to do the tough job of like digging up what are the problems where this can be deployed, right? And to your point, it's use case agnostic. So once they've discovered that, then you can come in and they can leverage your technology to solve it, right? So that's a huge value add for both.
Yeah, the bigger add is when you're a startup, you don't have a lot of top security clearance people, right, up and running where you can hire them to do this work. So they have all those people on staff and as contractors. So it's easy for us now to leverage them to be able to get in and have them do the work. We show them how to connect things with the APIs and they do the maintenance. It's like a perfect marriage.
That's great. And I'm happy to hear you use the words quick and efficient when talking about government services and professional services servicing the government. Because I know, for a long time, you think of the opposite words when you think of government and bureaucracy. So it's good to peel back the curtain and hear a little bit of that's actually servicing there. I guess it sounds like you have a ton of exciting opportunities. How do you think about measuring success? How do you think about kind of KPIs or OKRs or other metrics to determine like, hey, are we headed in the right direction here?
Yeah, I mean, there's two different aspects of it, right? It's the demand. Are there use cases? Do we have product market fit? That obviously is very clear. Is there demand? That obviously is very clear. Now it's just a function of executing on our pipeline. Like we have probably 6 guys in the queue that we don't have the time and resources with the team, a small team, to actually be able to bring them on and do the work. And so you get good execution on a pilot. So the lack has it's been the hard part is finding the capital, right? Finding the VCs that understand where we are, understand the upside and willing to participate at this point. That's been the biggest challenge. With given capital, this is like the sky is the limit. And we could be, I kind of said, at the end of 3 years, maybe you're doing 20 or 25 million in revenue. I think now we could be doing 100 million in revenue in 3 years. Right?
Tinderbox ready to go.
So it's just a function of getting the capital. So we have the resources, the physical people resources to kind of handle all the work that has to get done.
So demands there, resourcing and capital are kind of the binding constraints right now. I guess given that, how do you think about kind of the growth plan for the next 12 months?
We've got a number of people we're talking to that are finishing due diligence. So I would expect that we'll get some of this capital to come in. We also have some strategic companies that, firms we're talking to about using the technology that would strategically invest, which would give us basically more capital than we need. So it's just a function of going through that. So on the growth side, we'll continue to just bring on clients as we can scale them intelligently so they have a good experience because you only get one shot. We'll continue to work on that, but to really scale it up, if you're working with these partners, we need someone full-time on Carousel. We need somebody full-time on Snowflake. We need somebody full-time on Salesforce, driving their salespeople to understand what we do and how we can make them more money. That's all you need to be able to do, be successful with those platforms. And we have Calibra and we have Data IQ. So we just need people sitting on top of those. And we need some people in the organization to help people walk through the pilots, hold their hand, show them how to do things. And then it's pretty simple, but you'd be surprised, very surprised. But that's the whole process. You just want to do it. You want to do it. You want to do it properly.
You want to make sure that the incentives and the understanding is aligned with the partners where you grow, you make money, we make money, and that the clients that you do bring on kind of can realize the success and the opportunity that's inherent there. So yeah, I completely get it. It sounds like very exciting times to come for Emergen. So
it's been an interesting ride. It's been, as startups are, it's, a lot of positive stuff. A lot of stuff goes wrong you never anticipate. But all in all, no, it's been a wonderful experience. And we're just on the cusp of really blowing this thing out. So it's really exciting.
I feel like we'll have to check in with you again next year and hear about all the success stories that you've achieved because they all seem right on the horizon right now. But Chris, there's a lot of people that will want to check out what's going on, what's coming down the pike. Where should they go to find out more?
And then I got to be honest with you, I spend time on YouTube. I go on YouTube and I search what's new in AI, what's new in quantum computing, what's new with large language models, what's new with small language models. There is an enormous amount of information that IBM has a lot of great 11-minute YouTubes on all kinds of different subjects, like technical jargon, what is RAG technology, what are vector databases, what are large language models, what is AI, really those you can get scaled up on what is going on today very quickly with 10, 12-minute YouTube clips. I find that's the best way to keep up with what's going on because things are moving fast.
It's so true.
That is there's new stuff. And the quantum in particular we didn't even get into that, but we're working on a beta scenario with our NLP technology, we call it QNLP with quantum, and the results are staggering. And this is just the infancy of quantum, right? Staggering, the results. And
you go from 15 seconds to 0.015 seconds to digest 300.
Literally is 1,000x improvement in speed and accuracy of the model.
Interesting.
It's not, people talk about, we're going to get a 20% improvement and stuff.
Yeah.
X is the moon. No, 1,000x. So people think AI is overhyped. I'm with Eric Schmidt. AI is dramatically underhyped. And when quantum and all these, the advances in quantum's faster is accelerating faster than the improvements in AI. And when you plug those two together, it's going to be exponential. People are not going to be prepared for what is coming.
Yeah, it's not one of those things where like they're distinctly parallel and they don't impact one another, right? There's a lot of synergies that can happen when both are unleashed at the same time. And it is interesting you mentioned Eric, because I feel like they were quietly investing in AI and transformers, particularly a lot of money back before anyone was really paying attention. Look what's happened. They've
Yeah.
continued to pour money into quantum. They haven't really, broadcasted, or there's not been any flashy things about it, but obviously they see the potential there, right? So it's cool to hear that you're actually surfacing some of that with real workflows, like at the enterprise. Like that's a very exciting prospect.
Yeah, it's going to be, so that's part of it. The other part of it is agentic bots, which we didn't get into. We've built our own agentic bots to do a lot of things inside, write code, debug code, can actually do the pitch better than I can now. Use them as executive assistant. They do maintaining the knowledge graphs and the model. So that's the big growth. And we actually showed Snowflake, our agentic bots, and they flew Alan out from London to San Francisco the next week to do a workshop with their team. And their conclusion was you're 9 to 12 months ahead of everything we've seen in the agentic bot space. So that's exciting what that can do. A little frightening on one end, but exciting what that can do as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity with agentic bots as well as what we're doing with the model. And then you throw quantum in on the end. There's this thing is, I'm telling you, we'll be at 100 million of revenue before you know it.
Yeah, it's funny. People are always worried about like the analysts and the college grads that are going to lose their job. Some of the stuff you were talking about with the agentic bots is like CEO level, right? It's like who's doing the pitch, who can go out to investors and talk about some of that stuff. So I would love to maybe offline learn more about kind of your setup there and what you've found to be super effective for some of your agents, and where some of the morass can creep up trying to orchestrate all of these things. But to your point, a lot of interesting things on the horizon and a lot of exciting opportunities. So I guess, Chris, anything to leave with our audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions I get asked at dinner parties and all the time, because now I guess I'm the local AI expert, is what do my kids do now? Like, how do we change the education process to prepare kids for the new future? Because we're back these 1950s education process that hasn't been updated. So that whole thing needs to be scrapped and redone to have people have the skills to survive in the future. That's one part. The other part is I did something I posted on LinkedIn not that long ago that went back 150 years, I think, and then trendlined every major technological change over that time frame, and then plotted job growth through that. And no matter what the technological change is, we had job growth. So despite all the dire warnings and all the stuff, it will create opportunities we haven't even thought about. And so I think the fear that everyone's going to be unemployed and everyone's going to be on, Google and Facebook and Elon Musk are going to be paying everyone this income and you're going to sit on the beach. I don't believe in that utopia.
Yeah, it's like we don't know what we don't know, right? And some of the things that we will be enabled to do now, we can't even imagine right now, but we can better spend our time, energy, and effort focused on those things. So I like ending on that optimistic note. Chris, thanks for the time. I really enjoyed the conversation. We'll include links to EmergeGen and everything that's going on with you guys in the show notes.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.